Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on climate adaptation. I know there are still a few people waiting to join, so we will just give them a few minutes. But until then, on behalf of all the organizers, welcome to this session. So this session is focused on climate adaptation. So unlike the most of the program elements you have been part of so far, it's not so much focused on climate neutrality and how to decarbonize, but more how do we adapt the cities of the future to meet the future climate challenges that we face. My name is Charlotte Gill, and I represent the organization called State of Green, which is a Danish public-private partnership working to promote Danish green solutions to international decision makers. This event is an event co-organized with the Netherlands and Denmark, and we have many organizations behind today. We have the FME Innovation Quarter, the Embassy in Copenhagen from the Netherlands, Regional Business and Development Team of Nordics and Baltics, the Confederation of Danish Industry, and State of Green. So thank you very much for joining today. We will try to keep it very efficient and be finished in around an hour. And for all of you joining, you are very welcome to write in the chat any questions or input you might have. And for those of you who haven't been on online webinar, if that's been possible, please remember to mute yourself if you're not saying anything or being part of this session, so we make sure that we can hear and go through the session okay. We will send a follow-up email with the recordings and the presentations afterwards. But now I would like to introduce the moderator of today, which is Sven Erik, who represents the Confederation of Danish Industry and who is head of water and climate adaptation. So Sven Erik, please take the word.
Thank you very much, and welcome for this afternoon session, which is dealing with a very interesting event or topic, climate adaptation, which unfortunately is a growing problem. And we can see that even today there was a cloudburst forecast for Denmark. Until now it hasn't been really raining a lot, but it shows that we are facing a problem which will grow in intensity in the coming years. As Charlotte told, my name is Sven Erik Jebsen, and I'm heading our water and climate adaptation policy work in the Confederation of Danish Industry, and I have the pleasure of being moderator for the next hour. Climate change results in many effects that we need to address for our cities. More and more intensive rain, cloudbursts, new methods for handling of water, or sewers being invested heavily to cope with the more water. But besides that, we see rising sea level gives effect on very many cities. Rising groundwater level and rising temperatures in cities are some of the effects that we need to handle. So we need to adapt our cities for climate changes. It's not enough just to be climate neutral, because the climate changes are coming whatever we do today. So today we have two of the front runners among the cities to present their work on climate adaptation, Rotterdam and Copenhagen. And first we will give the floor to Johan Verlinde from the Rotterdam Waterwise, and I'd like you to take the floor, Johan, and give your presentation.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen now to show you my slides. Let's see. Hopefully you will see my slides now. Yeah, so I'm the program manager of Rotterdam Weatherwise, which is the climate adaptation program of the city of Rotterdam. And it's an integrated approach to rainfall, heat, drought, land subsidence, and flooding. So it's about a lot of climate teams, and we try to do that together with the city. A little bit of background about Rotterdam. Yeah, Rotterdam is a delta city, which is quite nice because we are at the border of a river and the sea. Very nice to live next to the water, as you see on this picture, these buildings. This used to be my office in the middle, the big building, but unfortunately I haven't been there for 1.5 years. It's also quite nice to live next to the water because you can have a port. We have the largest port in Europe, but at the same time, it can pose a lot of threat on your city because water comes from 4 sides. We have the river, and every once in a while, river levels get really high because of rainfall more east and even in Germany. And then parts of our city flood, so the unbanked areas. Then we have sea. Of course, sea level rise is a problem, but we have a huge storm surge barrier at the west. And if that closes off, then the whole city is disconnected from the effects of the sea. But also the port is disconnected from ships getting in, because that's quite a challenging decision to take. Then groundwater is a problem. We see with periods of drought that groundwater tables drop, and a lot of our old homes, and even my own house, are founded on wooden poles. And when groundwater table drops, wooden poles become dry and the houses will shift. Well, then you have to renew your foundation, which is quite an investment. At the same time, also groundwater sometimes rises, and then basements flood. A lot of basements are transformed into bedrooms or kitchens. Well, you don't want that. And precipitation, well, you already spoke about cloudbursts. That really is a challenge because 85% of our city is below the level of the sea. So this is everything that's blue over here is below the level of the sea. Everything that's brown is above, which means that okay, we are quite well protected from the effects of the river and the sea with all the dikes and the storm surges. But every drop of water that falls on the other side of the levee dike is a problem for us. So we have a good sewage system, 2,400 kilometers of combined sewage system in 1,100 pumping stations to pump everything to higher grounds and eventually into the river. But you see with climate change, a lot of rainfall falls in a short amount of time. And our sewer system just cannot cope with that. So we have to adapt our city to cope with that. So rainfall, but also heat and drought. So that's the adaptive city. And we are working on this for years and years, because if we wouldn't have done so, I think we wouldn't exist anymore. You said we are the front runner. I think it's a need to be that way because we are in a very challenging location. And I will show you some examples of the things we did in the last few years and the things we are going to do. And I think climate adaptation is all about multifunctionality, because if you design something for rainfall, well, it only rains 5% of the time. So what about the other 95%? And this is an example of the water plaza. We have 10 of these around our city. And the thing is, what they do is they collect rainfall. In this instance, from the surrounding buildings and surrounding area, they collect the rainfall. It's temporarily stored in these 3 reservoirs, which you see over here. There are 3 reservoirs, and 1.6 million liters of storm water can be stored over here. So they reduce the stress on our sewer system. But at the same time, when it's dry, you can do other things around here. The middle one is for sports. Then there's one on the top. It's a stage because there's a theater school next to the water plaza. And the left one is used for BMXing. And there's even a church. This is the building on the top. And they even do services when it's sunny outside in one of the reservoirs. And well, 10 of these all around the city. They look completely different because we designed them together with the citizens. So it's a plus to the public space, and at the same time, it helps in climate change in extreme weather. And when it's raining, it looks like this. Very beautiful. You see all the water flowing. And we let the water stay in the reservoirs for 24 hours. So people also can see what's happening, and maybe they do something to their gardens too. That's one thing. Another thing we do is, well, getting rid of all the pavement, if it's possible. And we have a lot of sewage system, but we also need to renew quite a lot because Rotterdam is sinking. We are living on sloppy soil, so also our sewage system is gradually sinking. So we have to renew 40 kilometers every year, and that's an opportunity to do something to the streets because you have to open up the road. Do we need all the bricks back? That's exactly what we did over here. There was an unused road, unused parking spaces, and we talked with the people living here and working here. I said, what don't you like about the public space, and what would you like? And they said, okay, we want the park. Well, it now looks like this. So it is a park. That's obvious. There's a lot of green, so it reduces the heat. But there are also ponds in there. So this is like a water plaza, but a more green one. So it's about water storage, but also adding green to your city. And that's what we do with every maintenance project in the city. Think, can we do something extra for climate change? Can we reduce the heat over here? Can we store water? And also do it together with the citizens. But these solutions were all about catching the water and getting rid of it. And now we see more and more periods of drought coming to our city. So in 1 month, we have a problem with water, we have too much, and the other month, we have too little. So can we connect those two and have a circular system? I show you this picture of a soccer stadium. It's in an area where there's a lot of problem with rainfall because it's totally paved. And at the same time, there's a soccer pitch, which needs a lot of water. And what we do over here, we build an urban water buffer. So we harvest the rainwater from this area. We clean it with a halophyte filter, so with plants, and then we pump it 15 to 30 meters deep, where we can have a fresh water supply. We can just leave it there. It's cool, pathogens don't have an effect, and we pump it up when we need it. In this case, for a soccer pitch, but we also build it in a street where we use it for cleaning the streets with those cleaning carts. And we're now thinking about building it next to our big Congress Center, where also Eurovision was. And every once in a while they have they need an ice ring, and then we can use it for that. So it's all about making it circular. And huge transformations to the public space. Our city council approved the 7 big projects. And those used to be really paved areas, but we're now transforming into green areas. This used to be all about cars, but now it's going to be a park. So it cools down the area. And by building these 7 projects, 100,000 people will have a cool area within 10 minutes walking distance, which they don't have now. So I think that's also, think about, do we need a car everywhere, or can we transform the roads into more green? And luckily our city council invests in that. But what you see is those projects were all about the public space. And actually the public space is quite little compared to the private property. The biggest part of the city is private property. So if we want to make our city climate proof, we need to work together with the private properties and transform them into climate proof buildings. And that's exactly what we are doing, because Rotterdam is for Dutch standard quite densely built, and 50,000 homes need to be built in the next few years. So what we do is we give strict rules to the real estate developers. And here you see a picture. It's still artist impression, but it's going to be built in this year. And the green you see is actually on top of the roof. So there's a park on top of the roofs of the buildings, so people can relax there. At the same time, it cools down the buildings and the areas. So our vision is that every building that's going to be built in the next few years and later on is all climate proof. It stores water, it cools the area, and also is an attractive place for the people living there. Because if you're looking on green, you already feel cool and it's good for the health. So that's something we want in our city, of course. But this was all about big projects. You also need to think small and maybe more on a home level or a street level. So that's why we motivate our citizens to take action themselves. And we motivate them to take a few tiles out next to their building and build a facade garden. So it's a small garden. Last year, we motivated more than 1,000 people to do so. And we thought, okay, how can we make people do even more? And that's when we introduced the national championship tile popping. And was actually a battle. The first one was a battle between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. Well, and if you look at soccer, that is the biggest clash you can imagine. And we transferred this to climate adaptation. And actually a lot of tiles were popped. 50,000 tiles were removed in Rotterdam. We won the championship. And this year, it is really a national championship. 85 cities are battling each other to remove a lot of tiles. But it's about doing big things, big infrastructural alterations to your city, but also try to connect to the citizens. We put a lot of effort in having discussions with our citizens, motivate them to take action by giving them good examples, but also by subsidy programs, because we need everyone to work with us on the negative effects of climate change. So that was it for me. I think I stop sharing now. Yes.
Thank you, Johan. It was a very interesting presentation about the situation in Rotterdam and how you're working to turn a problem into a benefit, you could say, to make livable cities. I think that's very interesting. I will not open the floor for questions for you just now because you are part of our panel later on. So if anyone has questions or comments for your presentation, please write it in the chat and we will come back to it during our panel discussion. And with that, I will go on to the next speaker, and it's Lykke Leonardsen from the Copenhagen City. And Lykke is head of the program for resilient and sustainable solutions in Copenhagen.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thank you to Johan. It's always interesting to hear what you are doing in Rotterdam. It has been one of our biggest inspirations here. Okay, and I'll give you a short introduction also to what we're doing in Copenhagen, concentrating on what we are doing when we are talking about cloudburst rain management. We started way back in 2008 and 2009 by working with Adaptation and sort of quickly looked at the risks that were threatening the city when it comes to climate change. And we found out that here now the biggest risk is actually the risk from rainfall, whereas when we go back, when we go a couple of decades out into the future, the risk from rising sea level and the recurring storm surges will be a bigger risk. But we started in 2011, we got the first taste of what this would actually mean for the city in the future. We had a big cloudburst where we had 150 millimeters of rain in 2 hours. It cost around $1 billion in damage, that a little less than 1 billion euros. But it also showed us that we had a lot of critical infrastructure in the city that was really vulnerable, not just flooding streets, but also hospitals and other important infrastructure. So in many ways, it became a game changer for what's going on in the city. And it led to a very quick development of our cloudburst management plan. And that's where we sort of took the first step to making a full citywide management plan for how to handle heavy rainfall in the city. One of the first things that we figured out was that just expanding the existing sewer system was not an option. We, just as Rotterdam, we have a combined sewer system in Copenhagen, and it would be extremely expensive, and it would also be very disruptive for the city if we were going to do that. And finally, a sewer system in pipes under the ground is not a very flexible solution, and given the fact that climate is changing and we don't know how much, means that we have to look other ways. And the idea then was to make a plan for the city where we looked at how we can actually handle rainwater mainly on the surface and only going underground where there was no other option. We divided the city into 7 catchment areas and made a detailed plan for each of them. And also developed new types of infrastructure, types of solutions where we could be using it, transforming existing streets to cloudburst streets. We still have pipes and tunnels and are using them in some areas, central delay areas that will be parks and squares and so on that can be used for temporary water storage, retention streets, and green streets. So these are all the solutions that we are working with in different ways around the city. It's 300 projects. We expect it to take about 20 years to implement. It's costing around 2 billion euros to develop, and it will be the backbone of the urban development in Copenhagen. And if you're wondering what the white spot in the middle is that's actually a different municipality. They took part in developing the plan. They have their own projects, but they're not here on the map showing our projects. And we are in full speed ahead. All the green ones are finished and all the red ones are in the planning process or actually during construction right now. And I'll just show you a few examples of projects that we have been doing to actually illustrate what is the way that we are dealing with all of this in Copenhagen. This one is Remiseparken. And it also, same as in Rotterdam, we're looking for where can we actually get recreational value for the citizens, where can we get more nature, where can we make sure that people have places to meet and so on. And we have also located some of the projects where we are spending a lot of extra money in areas where there's a need for these meeting places. And this park is located in a social housing area in Copenhagen, one of the areas where the government, national government says we have a lot of problems. And this park is actually a way of making sure that this all of a sudden has an interest for the wider city, giving the area a completely different reputation. And as you can see, it's not only green and nature, it's also areas for young people where they can actually hang out and have leisure activities when it's not raining. But it's really transformed that park. The first project we ever did was this one in Tåsinge Square. This was our climate neighborhood, where we originally intended that this would be our experimental neighborhood because we didn't expect things to move as fast as they actually turned out to do. So this square we developed also as part of a local urban regeneration project together with local neighborhoods. And it also shows how much you can actually get out of just a small project like this. There were no cafes here. There were no people meeting here. There was literally only a dog toilet for people walking their dogs. And now it's actually a very nice square where people are meeting. It's got cafes. It's got a lot of activities, local activities. So adaptation can also be something that adds to the quality of a city, and not only something fixing a technical issue. Right next to it, we have the St. Kjeld Square. This is how it looked before, the big roundabout. This is how it looked when it was finished. It's even greener now. This picture is 2 years old, but it really shows that we can depave a lot of the area, reducing the space for traffic and increasing the space for nature and for people, which has become a signature of this project, and also for the neighboring street. We can handle a lot of stormwater when it's raining, but we can also have places where people can meet and enjoy the area when it's not raining. Another one project that I really like is this Skandiagade, which is 8 sunken gardens along an old, basically empty street. It was only used for parking. It was like a dead-end street. It used to be part of a big traffic system, but that was cut off in some traffic project. And it was just lying there again, only being used by people walking their dogs. And on this elevated boardwalk underneath, we now have 8 sunken gardens, each with its different theme. And at the same time, you can use these areas for water management when it's raining. And it has really increased the use of that area. So it's and the local involvement of people in the neighborhood has created a great local ownership to it. And finally, probably our biggest project, this is Enghave Park, where it was a very classic, neoclassical park that was located in a very densely upbuilt part of Copenhagen. And this park was actually transformed. So now it's able to store around 23,000 cubic meters of water. And that's a lot when it's really raining. But when it's not raining, it's now actually also a place for people that can hang out. It has been an upgrade of the park that has kept a lot of the traditional elements of the park, but adding these climate change adaptation solutions to it. With a surrounding wall that can hold in the water, with hydraulic floodgates that can close automatically, simply because when the water runs in the holes, they lift up and they can hold back the water, and a small stream flowing along the wall all around the park, showing, illustrating how the park actually also is, how water is an element. And we also have a storage facility here where we can store some of the stormwater, and it can be reused both for the water running around the perimeter wall, but also for watering in the park. So the reuse of water is also an element here. And a sports field sunken into the ground, it still has the same function as before, but we've added the element of being able again to hold a lot of extra water in case of a heavy rain. And this is how you can see the perimeter of the wall, and it's become a really popular place also. Again, I mean, the quality of lifting up the park, adding to the element of water storage. And this is how it will look. We haven't had any events heavy enough for it to actually illustrate, to show any pictures of how it will look, but this is how it will look. Hopefully one day, if we have a heavy cloudburst, I don't think we will be kayaking in it, but nonetheless, it's still an element of to illustrate the amount of water that can be stored in the park. And I think that was my last slide, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Lykke, for a very interesting presentation. And now we are approaching the 10 years anniversary for the cloudburst in Copenhagen.
Yeah, July the 2nd.
Yes.
Let's see.
and I think it's quite impressive what you have done until now in these 10 years. And as Johan illustrated, trying to combine the problem into some benefits for the local societies. I think that's very interesting. Lykke will not be part of our panel discussion after this session. So if anyone has questions for Lykke, please write them now, then we will pass them to Lykke. But while you're writing, I could ask you, you said that you only use or mainly use surface solutions and only go underground when necessary.
Yes.
What do you have any indications on how often is it necessary?
It's mainly when we have to cross infrastructure. For instance, I'm not sure that the Danish railways would be very happy for us to have a waterfall and then water splashing down on the area right next to the central station, having to get a lot of water out of Vesterbro in Copenhagen. And in those cases, we have a tunnel system that will pick up the water and discharge it into the harbor. So it's situations where there are things blocking, and it could also be in situations where we have to basically lift some water up in order to get it out, where we will have to do that. We want as much as possible to only use natural gravitation, but again, Copenhagen, like Rotterdam, is a flat city, so sometimes we also have to use pumps in a few places, but we try as much as we can not to do it.
Great, thank you. And no questions so far, so thank you to Lykke and to the Copenhagen municipality. I think we have a representative from one of the companies that have been involved in some of the projects to take the floor now after you. So we will turn into our panel discussion, and we will have four participants in this. Ole Schrøder from Third Nature, Roy Jansen from Rockflow, and Martin van Rijn from Stahl Instruments. And then Johan Verlinde, as I told you earlier, will be part of the panel discussion as well. But I will start with the three that haven't had the floor until now and ask you to present yourself, your company, and make a few reflections on the learnings from Rotterdam and Copenhagen, and what could be used, and what is important for the climate adaptation for the coming decades. And I'll start with you, Ole Schrøder.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and good to see you in Rotterdam. Hoe gaat het met jou? Well, my name is Ole Schrøder. I'm an architect and one of the co-founding partners behind Third Nature, or Tredje Natur in Danish. We actually started out 2 weeks prior to the cloudburst event that Lykke just mentioned in 2011. Making a proposal for a climate district, also shown in Lucas' presentation, where we have been the planners and also the architect behind the Enghaveparken, the last project that Lucas showed. We are architects in the broadest meaning, since we are dealing with climate change in a broad perspective. It's not just rain from above or sea level rise from below. It's also urban heat island effect and everything in between, the concern about biomass or the lack of it, so to speak. So what we do in every kind of scale, spanning from a small climate tile to a climate park, a climate district, and most recently, actually a climate island called Lynetteholm of 270 acres outside of the port of Copenhagen. Everything we do is nature-based, simply out of the fact, and to quote Bruce Mau, we don't need islands of good behavior in a sea of stupidity. Meaning, if we have to deal with this massive challenge, we have to be able and capable of having an overview of the complexity when it comes to talking about urbanism. It means politics, it means economics, it means architecture, of course, as well, and nature-based solutions. So yeah, maybe a long introduction, but that is what we do.
Great. Thank you, Ole. And then we will turn to Roy Jansen from Rockflow. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Roy Jansen, Marketing Director here at Rockflow. Rockflow is part of the bigger Rockwool group. And what we do is we create clever solutions based on natural, fully circular stone wool to mitigate the effects of climate change. So basically, whenever no green is possible, and like Lucas said, you have to go on the ground. That's where we come in with a natural-based material. So all the way to the supplier side of things. With projects, of course, in the Netherlands and Denmark, but basically all over Europe. And when looking, of course, at the presentations from Johan, Luge, what we see every time, also when looking at other cities, is that on the one side, we see that, of course, the problems that all cities have are similar. But the diversity in the solutions is still so big. Of course, that has to do with regulations, with the sense of urgency in the cities, participants involved. But it brings up a lot of creativity, and sharing that is amazing to see. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Roy. And then I'll give the floor to Martin van Rijn from Stahl Instrument. You have to unmute.
Unmute. Yes. Yes. Hello. My name is Martin van Rijn, Stahl Instruments. I'm the product manager of Stahl Instruments. Stahl Instruments is a Dutch-based company. We're based in Eindhoven, and we're a manufacturer of radar level sensors. So we are pretty new. We are a scale up at the moment. And we built or we manufacture sensors which can measure the levels of all kinds of fluids. So we're also using these sensors for all kinds of tanks and silos and other reservoirs. But also in the water and wastewater industry, we are active with level measurements. So we already did some projects here in the Netherlands, but also more up in the Nordics in Sweden. We do projects measuring the pressure on the sewer system. So you can the main thing we solved in this situation is that normally if you want to install all kinds of sensors in your sewer systems, it's a very cost-intensive project, because you have to put all the infrastructures there. But we provide sensors that are working on batteries, and communicate wirelessly. So you can just place your sensors there for a couple of months, for a year, for 2 years, and just get all the data from your sewer system. So with respect to also with to the projects which were presented here, what you can do with the solution is that you can really evaluate also the measures that you take. So we see every rainfall. We can see in the data. You can see the water rise in the sewer systems. You can measure the pressure on your system, and when you take one measure in the city, afterwards you can also see in the months after what the effect was on the sewer system. So yeah, more my questions also to the and I think this could be an open discussion, is also how to evaluate the measures that are taken. I saw a lot of nice very nice projects who also have of course other value than only helping the sewer system dealing with a lot of water, of course. But my question also would be how to evaluate the positive effect a project in the city will have on these on your sewer system or dealing with heavy rainfall.
Thank you very much. And then we turn back to you, Johan, and I'd like to hear if you have any reflections on what you've heard until now. Or
well, I think that the last question by Martin is quite interesting. So to say, we do a lot based on models, right? So we model our city in 3D, and then we let, for instance, the Copenhagen cloudburst fall on our city, and we see what happens. But at the same time, we also measure in our sewage system and also the levels in our combined sewage overflows, because that's what we want to reduce. So we measure a lot, but also it's also about complaints, right? So how do people see the added value of those solutions? So when we build something in an area, first of all, we invite everyone to design with us, but also afterwards ask them, do you like the solution, or does it have any effect? So I think it's both about a lot of measuring, and data is always good, but it's also about having a talk with your citizens. Do they actually like what you've done?
sure. And now we have a question from the chat, and it's more or less following on your last words, Johan. I would be curious how, if you are engaging the different communities in the districts and are working in, and if you have encountered any challenges, meaning how do you involve the society in the projects? And I think at least you and Ola, I guess, have some reflections on this, but we can start with you, Johan.
Yeah, okay. Well, there are two things. So when we have a project somewhere, we invite the people living next to the project to design with us, to talk with us. So that's one thing. But at the same time, we also started our neighborhood program, because we see that every neighborhood in the city is completely different based on the people living there. Income, everything is completely different. So you need tailor-made solutions for every neighborhood. So in Rotterdam, we are starting 42 neighborhood dialogues. And it's not only about the civil servants coming to a neighborhood to start a discussion, but we determine what are the key figures in the neighborhood. We invite them as them who should join our discussion, and then you get a good discussion. On one hand, we tell them what problems might occur in the near future, what we as a city are going to do, but also what they can do. So we help them coming up with solutions, and also we help them financially. But it's really a tailor-made solution for every neighborhood. So, well, you have to put a lot of effort in it, but I think it's really important.
Thank you. And from your experience?
Yeah, I totally agree that involvement and ownership from the neighborhoods is a key. But I also think that the challenge that we are facing is requiring things that are beyond that, like whether the citizens like it or think it's nice. And I think pointing towards the Copenhagen projects, I think the success here is that we, together with the municipality and the utility company, created an integrated design. Because if you look like 50 years back, we have always, when challenging times were coming to us, we have been hoping that technology or design or architecture would save us. And I think we need to have a better understanding of the complexity and the need for interdisciplinary solutions here. So what we do with our projects for the municipality of Copenhagen, and also actually recently a project in Groningen in the Netherlands, is creating scalable systemic solutions that are integrated. Not meaning that we dig up all the asphalt or the roads and reinstall bigger sewer systems and put asphalt on top of again, because it's super important that people see what has changed and what the added value can bring on top of something that is not just nice or architecture. I think we have to go beyond aesthetics. We have to work closer with the engineers. We have to work closer with style instruments, implementing the technology directly in the solutions as well. So looking at where design can actually create added value or added functions. That is what we have tested here with a 50-meter stretch called the climate tile stretch, where we have a standardized sidewalk tile that can now retain a cloudburst situation until the existing sewer system is ready to receive it. We can also use that reservoir water to water the trees. I guess any city in the Western world is looking towards an ambition of planting more trees, like New York, 3 million trees, Berlin, 1 million trees, Copenhagen, 100,000 trees. The question is, since water is a scarce resource, also especially in the future, where does that water come from? How can you secure that we can plant all those trees so that they can keep on being green and alive? So we simply have to reorientate the city on what is living and not so much on technology. Technology is a part of the solution, but it's not the only answer.
And what about being able to a rock flow installation? Will they be nervous for their basements, or what are your experience?
Well, we typically are coming into play, of course, when there are vital above ground solutions that need to be there. I saw a lot of parks, I saw a lot of green in presentations in both the Netherlands as well as Denmark, which is very nice to create a livable city. But in many occasions, you will still need a street, you will still need a railroad, you will still need apartment buildings. And that's where we like to come in, since we have a still natural solution, which goes underground. So instead of giving up a function above ground for something else, we can still maintain that function above ground and have underground water reservoirs to collect and to hold rainwater and then infiltrate into the soil rather than transporting this to a sewer system. So we are happy to help.
Perfect. Now I think we should move to a second question, or nature-based solutions. It's very in just now to talk about it. The Commission are discussing how to integrate it in the revision of the Urban Wastewater Directive, which we expect to come early next year. There's a questionnaire out now. If anyone wants to participate in it, it can be found on their website, I think until mid-July. But you could say we're nature-based solutions to handle more intensive rain. It has been developed more or less over the last 10 or 15 years, both in Netherlands, Denmark, and other places. But is it still innovative early stage projects, or are we ready to go up for really a wide scale solutions? Or you could say, what are the maturity of nature-based solutions? Is it only for the nice pictures, for the presentations, or can it really matter in real life to be proactive? So I can see Ole would like to respond.
Yeah, but I think we are definitely ready, and we also showed it with this project called Lynetteholm that I shortly mentioned, that we are planners and architects for the municipality and the state of Denmark and the company of By and Havn port authorities here in Copenhagen. And simply by securing a huge part of Copenhagen by establishing this 270-acre man-made island. And we could do that in a very conventional way by having like a vertical spunsning, iron foundation going directly into the sea. Or we could develop, as we did, a 60-acre sized coastal landscape that is able to create this adaptable and adaptive sea level rise solution instead of the hardcore conventional one. And simply, it's not just a nice solution, it's also one that makes sense in the bank, since we were able to actually establish the ground with 1.5 meter less soil on this man-made island of 275 acre. So again, here it makes sense to create accessibility, recreational landscapes, more biodiversity both above and below water level, and creating this huge value to the city of Copenhagen as well in the future. So I think we're more than ready to go from idea and concept and implementing it on a huge urban scale here in Copenhagen.
Perfect. And Martin, are you ready to monitor it with your instruments so that we can keep as much control of the nature-based solutions as the conventional sewer systems?
Well, I don't have a clear picture yet what exactly to monitor, but if it's indeed some way of water levels or fluid levels, then it's of course then we're able to monitor it. As I said, you don't need any infrastructure. You can just place one box and it will get you the data from the point where you want to measure it. So I think it's we're able to to do it. Yeah.
Perfect. And what do you think, Johan, in the city of Rotterdam, is nature-based solutions your main tool, or is it still the concrete sewers, or will it be a combination for in the future as well?
I really think it's a combination, because if you look at climate adaptation, you need a good system. So your sewage system and your pumping station, they need to be in order. So that's the core of it all. But we see that's not enough. We just cannot cope with the excess amount of water. So we need to do something extra. So you really need to invest in your basic system. At the same time, on top of that, add nature-based solutions on a large scale. And now we do that a lot in the public space, but we also need all the roofs to be transformed. I think there's a huge opportunity. We have 14.5 square kilometers of flat roof in Rotterdam. Well, let's transform those in intensive green roofs, or even rooftop farms, or anything else. So I think it's a huge opportunity, but not only for climate adaptation, but also for health, for biodiversity. It links a lot of the goals for your city together. It has added value to a lot.
And Roy, do you have any comments for this?
No, I agree. Of course, I think there are already very nice nature-based solutions that can compete with concrete when it comes to underground solutions. But indeed, it will be a combination of looking for the green where possible, since it creates also a lot of livability in densely populated areas. I also agree that Johan's comment that the roofs is still a very open opportunity to create added green into the urban area, where on the ground surface it is not always possible. So yeah, it will be a mix. Coming back to the original question, are we still innovating, or are we already ready to scale? I think it's a clear mix of both. You can see that in the diversity of solutions that we've seen already just today. That still we are trying to adapt and to find new solutions, but on the same side, there's a strong sense of urgency to act, and you see that the first movers are already now full speed ahead to mitigate the effects of climate change in densely populated areas.
Okay, and then a final round. What will be the key issues to solve the next 5 or 10 years to really promote nature-based solutions? And you have around 1 minute.
Okay. But to me, nature-based solution and technology aren't opposites. Like, they need to be integrated. So to me, nature-based solution doesn't necessarily require it to be green, sprinkled on top of the project or the structure or something blue. Nature-based solution to me is the system, is the way of thinking. So getting back to the structure, if you look at nature, then everything is circulated, everything is connected. And the way we have been planning our cities throughout the past centuries is linear, always linear. So when we see below the streets of our cities, we have a Tower of Babel of utility companies, and they don't speak the same language. They don't have any kind of timing. They don't use any kind of software. They use software, but they don't combine their softwares or that gathered knowledge. So we have to look at nature-based as something that is systemic and scalable, not necessarily green or architecture or technology. It's a way of thinking.
Okay, and then we'll go to Roy. What do you think is?
We should, in any case, continue to learn in all kinds of ways, and especially because that would be an interesting one also for Johan, to create a sense of urgency with the general public. So we see the municipalities having all the plans decades ahead to see where all the water goes. But is the sense of urgency there also when you talk to people who are living actually in a city? And are they also willing to change on their private homes and spaces? Because it will have to come from both parties, both from private as well as from the public sector.
Thank you. And Martin?
Yes, of course, I'm not really an expert in this area, but in the nature-based solutions. But on the other hand, yeah, we're of course happy to support this direction, and also if we can help, prove that it works. I hope it will really get some traction there. So that was it more from my point of view.
But I'm sure if you can't measure it, you can't control it and have it operating very
Exactly,
smoothly.
yeah.
So I'm quite confident that we need as much instrumentation for nature-based solutions as for traditional sewer systems. But Johan, what do you think is the burning platform for the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, what I hope and what actually is the goal of our program is that we are unnecessary in 2030, and we want the whole city to be climate proof. But it means that everyone who does something with an impact to the city does it with climate change in mind. So if it's your garden or someone from the city who does something to a road, or a real estate developer to a building, everyone does it with that in mind. And then also, and I totally agree, we have to do it together. It's really an approach where the whole city needs to cooperate. So, but still a lot needs to be done to reach that goal, I think. But let's go for it.
Great. Thank you to the panel for sharing your experience and being very precise and short, so we could keep it within this hour we have for this event. And I'd like to give the floor to Afke Mark from FME to give some closing remarks.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Thank you, of course, to our panelists. I think it was really amazing how, and I don't know if you guys have discussed this before, but you made a really good combination of the importance of design, the importance of cooperation, the importance of, having a society involved, and the importance of, the enabling role of technology and how tech can help, make those climate the climate movements that we need to make in order to keep our cities livable. So thank you so much for that. Also, thank you so much for Sven Erik for moderating this session. I think because I was not from FME. FME is the Employers Association for the tech industry in the Netherlands, which means I have I represent Dutch tech companies in this, and we didn't just co-organize this session, we actually co-organized the entire mission. So that was also last Monday and today, because we do feel like it's important to work together with both public and private parties to, tackle the issues that we have when it comes to urban development. That also means that today was, as far as we're concerned, not a one-off. This was an amazing way to, start the conversation, see where there are synergies. But as far as we're concerned, we'll be taking these conversations to the next level, because we do, as Johan and Lugo already outlined, we're taking steps, but we still have some steps to go. And we really want to kind of join forces and tackle the issues that all of the cities have in order to, reach our shared goals. So in that respect, we're very, glad that we had an amazing kickoff session, and we're really looking forward to working with every single one of you in the future. And I think that is pretty much it from my side. Sven Erik, I'm not sure if I should give the floor back to you. Nope. Well, then we will give you the opportunity to take a quick cup of coffee or glass of water before going on to the next session at 3. You can also, of course, always join the session at 4, where we do a wrap up of both days, so both the 14th and the 21st, and we think about next steps. And yeah, I hope to see you there. Thank you all so much, especially to our speakers and panelists for sharing your thoughts with us. And we'll stay in touch and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.